Ryan Garcia is now the WBC welterweight champion of the world. This comes years after his contemporaries, that quintet of stars. Like I said last night, Shakur, Devin Haney, Teofimo all became champions in 2019. Gervonta Davis became champion against Pedraza in 2017. Now Ryan Garcia joins them, and this transaction is now complete. Mario Barrios was brought in to lose to Ryan Garcia, to get Ryan Garcia over and become a world champion. And Ryan did so with flying colors and drops him in the first round with his right hand. Didn't have to rely on the left hook not whatsoever. He landed some bombs with the left hook. But this was vintage Ryan Garcia. This was the Ryan Garcia that stopped Luke Campbell, the guy who had his fight with Devin Haney inevitably overturned, but on the night won that fight. And then rightfully, an overturn anyways. Garcia with a very strong, impressive performance in dominating Mario Barrios. I will say, hey, I got a lot of flack in these comments. It all came full circle in this sense, Raheem. I got a lot of flack in the comments for saying Shakur Stevenson, while brilliant, just like Ryan Garcia was very impressive last night, could have done more, right? And I think he could have gotten Mario Barrios out of there, maybe even early, if he had a little bit more consistent volume. But that's never been Ryan Garcia. He's never been a high volume, consistent volume, anywhere near 3 minutes of every round guy. That's never been his MO. But I do think he could have got him out of there. And you know who was saying that apparently on the broadcast? Shakur Stevenson. So I said it about Shakur Stevenson. He could have added a few more left hands here and there. Could have added a combination here and there while he was landing his jab at will against Teofimo Lopez. And say the same thing about Ryan Garcia. I think is as dominant as last night was 120-107 on my card. He won every single round. Outgunned Barrios in firepower completely, and talent and hand speed, quick twitch, all of that. But yeah, he could have done more. And I just had to start with that. It all came full circle. Shakur could have done more, and he said Ryan could have done more. And I'm saying they both could have done more. We're starting on the good foot here. What did you think of the fight, Raheem?
You put a lot of layers on the cake, right? Yeah. Let's deal with the first bit.
Yeah.
I don't see Barrios as a transactional fighter in that he was handing his championship over to a foregone conclusion. Now, those in the comments are going to have to admit that there were a lot of people picking Barrios in this fight and calling us both crazy. Saying that they couldn't understand how we were so confident in how we picked these fights. And I will say this also, that escaped my mouth before I could pull it back. I don't pick fights. And we were on the show, and I was so comfortable talking to you like we're off camera that I said it. And as soon as I said it, I was like, shit. I didn't mean to put that out there. So I hate to say I told you so when I didn't mean to tell you in the first place that I'm talking to that comment section. But I did believe that Ryan was going to be able to do exactly what he did. In fact, I thought he was going to be able to do even better than what he did. To your point, I thought he was going to be able to get him out of there second half of that fight. And when he knocked him down in the first round, in the first half of the first round, I was like, oh, this might not even go 3 or 4. That said, it wasn't vintage Ryan Garcia. This guy was better than the Ryan Garcia we've seen in vintage footage. I was impressed with not just his ability to change his attack, knowing that they were going to try to take the left hand away. Everyone with any common sense would know that has to be the first thing that you work on if you're training Barrios to fight Ryan. But secondly, that Ryan was able to come up with that right hand, be disciplined with it. I took some flack in the comments about me saying, oh, the length was going to be a problem for Barrios. And then, oh, Barrios is taller and Barrios is longer than Garcia. What are you talking about? You're crazy. The fact that you are taller and longer doesn't mean length can't be a problem for you. It was the fact that Pacquiao was in and out, much shorter arms, of course, was giving Barrios problems. And my thinking about when I said the length would be an issue for him is that Ryan would be able to deal with him on the outside and be catching him on the end of punches. And it was clear that Barrios has a problem with getting inside or dealing with a guy who might be fighting on the outside and not being able to get in and out if that's where Barrios' attack is going to lie. And of course, counterpunching is the way you beat Ryan if you're going to beat him. And you're going to have to get on the inside to do that. You're going to have to be able to get past the jab to do that. You're going to have to be able to do what Sean told you to do, which was catch and return to do that. And that was the difference in this fight. Ryan kept him outside. Ryan's right hand was tremendous. Left hook was still working, left was still working, but I mean, the execution, the patience, and where we part company is I am not so desperate for the knockout that if you don't get it, I'm disappointed. If you put on a clinic like Shakur did, if you put on a clinic like Ryan did, I'm happy to watch you go 12 and beat this guy up and not take any unnecessary risks if the fight is still entertaining. I was entertained by both fights. Ryan is still hittable. Ryan can still be dropped. Ryan still has his chin up. Ryan still sometimes swings wide, less in this fight than normal, which is another reason why I think he was better than Vintage. But you don't want to get caught in the 11th. You don't want to get dropped in the 12th. You don't want to get dazed in the 10th. If it's working, it's entertaining enough for me, and you're headed to a shutout and get that title and get your hand raised without a highlight to show any porous defense flaws or mistakes trying to chase it. It's really on Barrios to force Ryan to go for the knockout. If he's going to press him in the championship rounds, if he's going to throw caution to the wind and make Ryan have to stop him or run in there and, make Ryan walk him onto a shot, well, that's how you get the knockout. But if Barrios ain't game, don't go chasing it, especially if you're Ryan Garcia. Maybe if you're Shakur, I get it. You can probably go chasing and still be defensively very responsible, but Ryan can't, right? That was, I would say, the thing that I was most impressed by, and the thing that I was most disappointed in was what I predicted ahead of the fight, which was the corner of Barrios. Something ain't right with that Goosen chemistry, that game plan. Goosen, I don't think, did Barrios any favors. I don't like seeing or hearing cornermen, especially when your fighter is losing on the broadcast. I tell that camera and that microphone, that ringside reporter, to get the out of there
Well,
while
Raheem,
I'm trying to figure out how to get my fighter back on track.
I was just getting ready to do a slight joke. Joke was like, well, Raheem, though, you got to understand that Mario, he's got to get in there. All right, you got to test Ryan. You got to get on the inside. You got to fucking get inside on him now. All right, Raheem, and I'm doing my job in the corner. Okay, and DAZN's coming here to interview me about my fighter, and I'm just simply doing my job. Anyway,
Yeah, you need to keep doing your job because it ain't working. You need to figure out how to do something better. And also, I thought Henry Garcia letting the audience know that Ryan's right hand was hurt was also a mistake. People are listening to the broadcast. People from either corner, if you're responsible, have an ear everywhere trying to find out what's going on in the other guy's corner, trying to get an advantage, trying to find out anything they don't already know in the corner. If I'm hearing the opposite corner talk that on a broadcast, that's definitely getting to the fighter. I'm definitely going to find out and going to put that in the ear of my fighter. Hey, his right hand is working. Maybe move to that side. Put it on him that way. Now, granted, if his right hand was hurt, boy, oh boy, I don't want to see what's happening when it's not hurt. Ryan, I thought,
it's always
with
hurt,
the
though.
exception of his defense, which is always going to have some issues, pretty fucking flawless performance. 8 out of 10, man.
So you want from Henry Garcia, the old NFL X right 22?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, it's bad enough that bad enough. I enjoy hearing what the corner is saying in the corner to the fighter between rounds, but like during the round, I think it's too much to ask of either coach in any situation to be doing punditry, to be answering interview questions while the fight is on. I don't need that. The trainer should be watching his fighter every single second of every round and not being answering reporters' questions, but especially if you're losing.
Unless it's Raheem working the broadcast and he has questions for you in the corner, then you got to make an exception to this rule that you're making. But but okay. So back to your point minutes ago about the length giving Barrios problems and people pushing back on you. Go, what do you mean? He has a longer reach. Devin Haney's length gave Brian Norman problems. Brian Norman has a longer reach than Devin Haney. So that's just because you have the longer arms doesn't mean you're better at long range. And so that speaks to your point. And fighters heading into this fight, like Tiger Johnson, like many others, they told me Ryan gives up his height. He doesn't fight tall, or excuse me, Barrios doesn't fight tall. And to your point about Ryan being better than ever, yeah, he fought with a good rhythm in this fight. He boxed well, and even though he doesn't have a consistent jab, he has a good little stiff arm at times, and he has leave that left hand out there every now and then. And Tim Bradley, other guys, they explain what fighters do with positioning is they can draw that invisible line in the sand. That if you go past this line and they're cocked and they have the right kind of positioning, that if you pass this line, they have the positioning to pull the trigger if you do that. And he did that well in this fight too. And there was a few times just that difference in athleticism, that quick twitch. There was a few times Barrios tried to counterpunch him and he wasn't there. He just simply had enough to fire off 3 or 4 or 5 shots when he wanted to, and he was too quick for Barrios. Barrios had to keep these home too long, and by the time he tries to respond with something, so he did try to catch and shoot sometimes. He was just so outgunned in athleticism that by the time he pulled the trigger, Ryan wasn't there, and Ryan didn't have to get that far out of range to not be there. He just had a quick little twitch back, a little step back, and he doesn't really feint, and like I say, he doesn't really have a consistent jab, but there was a little something to his rhythm. He didn't go one direction too long, and he had it's just something about his body's rhythm that almost worked as a feint at times and kept Barrios honest and wouldn't allow him to really get downhill with any kind of volume. And that's a credit to Ryan's boxing IQ and his skill, not just his obvious talent and explosiveness. So I think, and about saying it was a transaction, I meant the fight was the whole point of this show. I'm not saying Barrios was in on it. He didn't just show up to hand him his title, although I do think Barrios was very flat. And even from a physical body standpoint, compare how he looked at the Manny Pacquiao weigh-in to how he looked at this weigh-in for Manny Pacquiao. It's not the same kind of physique, but it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, ultimately, it wouldn't have mattered. He could have brought in whatever physique he wanted, and he's just outgunned by Ryan Garcia across the board. No, go
He
ahead, Ryan.
looked like Joe Goosen sounded flat, dull, and monotone. There was something wrong in that camp. And I think that the fighter doesn't gel with the trainer. I don't think the trainer brought anything to the fighter that was some kind of secret sauce because he had trained Ryan in the past. And if anything, Joe Goosen served as lighter fluid for Ryan to be as motivated and stay on top of Barrios for the entire fight. By the third or 11th or 12th round, Ryan is looking at Goosen and talking to Goosen and beating up Goosen in his mind. That's how much Ryan wanted to make this statement. And without Goosen being in that corner, I don't know if Ryan is quite that focused, gives that performance. And what we both agreed upon ahead of this fight, which of course didn't require a great deal of boxing analysis history to know, is that the speed was going to be a major factor.
Yeah.
And boy, was the speed too much. Boy, was the speed a major factor. But not only was the speed working for Ryan, which we could anticipate, but his punch selection has to be commended. Yes, there was a lot of head hunting, but that's because Barrios wasn't moving his head as much. But every time Barrios got brave, every time Barrios started to get a little bit of control of the distance and start making some headway, wham, right to the body, just like we seen him on social media. It reminded me of when we thought he wasn't training at all. I guess he was training for those body shots with those body shields with influencers, because not only was he landing the body shot at the perfect time to put Barrios back in his place, but it sounded like he was hitting a body shield, like coming through the television, because I wasn't there, you were. Those body shots were crackling. these things in Ryan's toolkit being executed the way they were executed, I think this might be the fight that we look to when we say that turning point is there. This was the turning point fight for Garcia. He can't go back to vintage Garcia. If he looks like he used to look in the future, if he looks like he used to look in the past, that is a regression. He has to go from here as a world champion. This was the great way to clear that threshold. He stepped his game up. He went up a level to become a world champion. A shutout performance, a knockdown in the first round. Didn't get overzealous, didn't get loose, continued to fight his fight. Great performance, and now he's a champion off the back of that. And we don't ever want to see anything less than that in the future. I love the chemistry between him and his dad. I love him having Henry on his trunks, passing the belt to Pops in the post fight. I mean, it's a perfect night to become champion. And it's a good example of what it's like to become a man in front of the world. I think this guy had a mature performance pre fight, during fight week, during the fight, and post fight. We may be finally looking at a guy who's grown into himself.
Yeah, and I've struggled with this too. The mania can overcome you. You get too high, you get too low, and he stayed composed in the aftermath of winning this fight. He took it in, it felt good. He dedicated it to his dad, but he didn't give in to that manic pop off because what accompanies those are crashes as well. And if you're going to stay consistent going forward and hold on to this form you're talking about, and he needs to prove he can hold on to this form. And we'll talk about that form being questioned by Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney in a little bit in this discussion. But you got to string together two or three, four times looking like this each time out to prove to people that you can consistently be this version of yourself time in and time out. And you're not up and down and up and down and not getting too manic in the post fight, not popping off too hard like he did in April of 2024 against Haney may go a long way in helping do that in the ring. And yeah, a lot of your assessment sounded like Samantha when I talked to her about the fight this morning. She noted that maturity from Garcia as well. And we'll commend Barrios, by the way, in the aftermath of all this for being tough, for hanging Texas tough for 12 rounds when I didn't think he was going to make it out of 5 or 6 after the first round knockdown. Um, Now, about becoming a champion for the first time, right? Now, the green belt is the glamour belt. It's the prettiest of them all, right? We like that green and gold. Mauricio does many, many things to render it a trinket. And someone drawing a real hard line, and I wouldn't take umbrage with that hard line, would say he won a trinket last night. Barrios is not considered he's not considered the lineal champion. He had yet to actually successfully win in a title defense. He had 2 draws since winning the interim title and then being elevated to full champion, but without ever actually winning as champion of the WBC. Devin Haney's rated at atop as the WBO champion. Okay, you won the WBC title, but the WBA champion just beat you in your fight previous to that, and that's Rolando Romero. And I mentioned at the top of this how Shakur won his in 19 and Haney and Teofimo in the previous decade. The other 4 won their first title. All of them except for Gervonta Davis have either been unified champion. Actually, all of them have been unified champion except Gervonta Davis and lineal champion. Shakur, lineal at 30 and 40, Teo at 35 and 40, and Haney at 35. And all of them, like I said, have held multiple titles at one time in a weight class. So, yes, you won your first world title, and I saw him popping champagne in the locker room, which is all good. I'd do the same thing if I won the green belt. But I think that warrants being mentioned here. And if he really wants to be a true champion, he would have to win a unification with Devin Haney, and then he'd really be a champion the way his peers have become champion in their careers in their 20s. Now about that, no, go ahead, Raheem, and then let's get to that point about the form that Shakur and Devin Haney and some people in the comments will be questioning.
The green belt, and as much as I am critical of Suleiman and some of his decisions and his
How can you not be?
rhetoric of late,
Yeah.
I believe it does hold a special value, and especially to a Mexican American fighter. You gotta beat the champions that hold the
Floyd seemed to be
belts.
fond of it too. To be fair, I think above all titles, it still has the greatest lineage and
Okay,
everything. Continue. Yeah.
so I'm saying that it has a special reverence in general, but I
Hmm.
think there's even a little added mustard on it because it's Suleiman, because Latin American fighters have a special regard. I think just the fact that it is a sanctioning body controlled by a Latin American, and they want to win that. You want to call it a trinket? He won himself a pendant that
Got some
Suleiman
ice now.
provided. You
Yeah.
know, he wanted to become world champion, and I don't begrudge him his entry door. That was the route that made the most sense for him. That's a fight that two Mexican Americans could fill T-Mobile with. And again, we can't pretend like a lot of people weren't picking Barrios. And even to your point, you say even Barrios isn't the worst of the champions. You know what I mean?
I kept saying Lewis Crocker was, and some Brits after
Exactly.
the fight were like, "No, he's not." And I go, "Okay, maybe he's not, but
But
that's
there's an
what." Yeah,
argument to be made, is all I'm saying.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then I like the way this is setting up. I like to see Rolly get a rematch now that they both are title holders. That makes that rematch sexier. It puts some stakes on it, and it's an easily sellable fight. And by the way, when I said that Rolly wasn't a heavy-handed puncher, I will concede to the critics in the comment section that I probably should have used a different term. I'm wrong about that. Rolly Romero is a heavy-handed puncher. When I said that, what I was thinking was Rolly Romero couldn't stop Garcia after he knocked him down. And really, what I should have been crediting was Garcia's chin as opposed to questioning Rolly's punching power. Yes, he's a power puncher. Yes, that's his greatest weapon. But my point being, when I was talking about that element, was that to put Garcia down, what Barrios would have had to do was to have the power not only to knock him down, but then to keep him down, which only Tank was able to do with a body shot. Maybe because he was weight trained, or maybe because Tank just has that kind of power that that Rolly didn't have the ability to stop Ryan. That what's the kid, the British kid that knocked
Luke,
Garcia down with his chin
Luke
up.
Campbell.
Luke Campbell couldn't finish him, and maybe that's just a credit to Ryan's chin. But for those who are taking exception with that comment, yeah, I should have been more clear. That's not the right thing to say about Rolly. But the point being made was that Barrios, even if he had an opportunity to get to Ryan, I don't believe had the punching power to put Ryan down and keep him down. Now we'll never know because he never really got there. And if there's any credit to be given to Barrios, it was his own chin. The fact that his skin was thicker than we thought, no cuts. He got up from that knockdown in the first round and could have quit or could have tucked up and just survived. He still kept trying to win. There was just
Hmm.
nothing there for him. So I know we're a little bit away from this belt conversation, but with all that said, to me, that makes this a valid championship. He's not the champion, in
Yeah.
that no one would regard him as the best champion in the division, but he is a valid belt holder. And now let's get to unification. Let's get to undisputed. And I like the road to both of those things with the current champions having to fight each other in that division.
Well, I think Rolly definitely has the power. It's just that Ryan kept his hands in his pocket, and Rolly didn't do much either. Nothing really happened after the knockdown in the second round of their fight. They both have the power to knock each other out. It's just they kind of stopped throwing punches after the second round, and Ryan was tamed, and Rolly stabbed him to the bottom, worked his lead hand better than Ryan did, and it was an anticlimactic fight for 10 rounds after the knockdown. But in a rematch, the KO potential is there for both of them. They just both have to throw punches.
Yeah, I'm just saying I don't want to get off on a rolly
No, no,
thing,
I
but
know, I know.
if he's stabbing to the body, he's winning rounds, he's heavy-handed. If he's heavy, strong enough, he sh after that knockdown like that, he should be able to finish Garcia. Again, maybe it's Garcia's chin. Certainly, Rolly is heavy-handed, but my point just was that what Barrios would have to bring was more than what Barrios had, and I feel like more than what Rolly had. So if Rolly don't got it, Barrios definitely don't got it. That was the point. We can move on.
Yeah, no, just their power is such. They're both so explosive that both of them were not opening up for a majority of their fight. If they did open up and produce the more explosive rematch, someone is going to sleep at some point, probably. But that's
Mm.
another topic for another day if they ever do actually fight again. Now, to the form of Ryan Garcia, which was impressive last night, you're going to get a lot of people questioning in the comments. And my instant reaction, they're questioning it. Shakur Stevenson hinted at it last night, and Devin Haney said Ryan's off that good juice, right? And I'll just say Ryan pissed hot, right? It's on his record. He got suspended for a year. And when you piss hot, your fight rightfully gets overturned to a no contest. But Shakur and Devin are both snack athletes, okay? And rest in peace to Victor Conti. But snack is started by the biggest, we know this, but I'll say it again, it bears repeating, the biggest convicted steroid dealer in professional sports in the United States' history, okay? So I got news for you guys. You none of you have ever popped for a goddamn thing, but you to the audience are not above suspicion either. And before the whataboutisms, Mario Barrios is a snack fighter. Bam Rodriguez is a snack fighter. Virgil Ortiz is a snack fighter. So are Clarissa and Shakur and Devin Haney and all that. And that does not get you guilty of anything. But all I'm saying is the same audience is they got an eyebrow raised at people who go to snack. Jeff Mayweather, he told me I think all of it should just not be allowed. Any drug, because they are drugs. They're supplements, aka drugs. And whether we can argue are they quote unquote performance enhancing drugs or not, Jeff Mayweather told me years ago, I just think all of it shouldn't be allowed. You should have, but that's okay, whatever. Point being, Ryan popped hot, and because of that, there will always be a question of was that is that and guys know how to. There is such a thing we know from Lance Armstrong and from several athletes in several different sports. There's such a thing as cycling and the clear and all this stuff. I just want to be fair to everyone involved and point that out. Okay, suspicion certainly isn't the same thing as actually being found guilty, which Garcia was. But I'm just pointing that out. That suspicion will remain for Ryan Garcia at a higher level than the guys I just mentioned, but they're not above it either because when you work with a company founded by a guy who has those credentials I mentioned earlier, people will be suspicious of that as well. I say all that to say I want to see the rematch. And whatever you do or not doing, as long as you both pass your drug test, I want to see a rematch. And I think you get a better Devin Haney in fight number two against a better Ryan Garcia in fight number two. And also, what we always talk about styles make fights, right? What are two of
Wait,
the? Go
wait.
ahead.
Can
Yeah,
I
go
weigh
ahead.
in on the
Yeah,
PED
yeah.
conversation before we move on?
Mm-hmm.
We're in the first quarter of 26. One thing I can guarantee you is by this time in 27, two or three fighters will have pissed hot, will have popped dirty one way or another. I have no idea who those fighters are going to be. It may be four or five, it may be one or two, but it'll be at least two, probably three minimum. And we don't know who they are. And we'll all be shocked when we find out. And then those fighters will have the scarlet letter for the rest of their career. But the way to fix it, because the sport is tainted, it's not, I mean, those who have popped dirty, they're tainted individually. But the reason you can speculate or cast suspicion on those who haven't been caught or popped dirty, who may not be dirty, but also may be dirty, is because the sport itself is not properly policed. The benefit to having something of a fighter daddy or godfather of the sport now should be that we have year-round testing. Anyone who fights in these silos, if you're gonna compete in ring, if you're gonna compete in Zuffa, if you're gonna compete in these universes that are clearly controlled, if you're gonna compete on DAZN, I should say, if you're gonna compete on uh, Paramount Plus, let's extract it that far out, since people are also at the top tier of those executive boards as investors, and the promoters are a part of it. Why can't we have year-round testing? It's like America not having universal health care. We have money to pin figures for Conor Ben for an opponent we don't even know who it is yet. We have all of these tens of millions of dollars to overpay fighters. We got money to do uh, Times Square events. We got all of this money to put all of these promotions together, put Netflix shows on, but we don't have money to do year-round testing for fighters who are going to be involved in these events. We got enough money to fund wars in America as a country, but we don't have enough money for universal health care. To me, it's the exact same kind of dynamic that would clean up the sport overnight. If you want to participate in these high level events, you want to be on these major platforms, you want to be a part of these promotions, then you got to be involved in year round testing, period. Don't let them fool you. There's enough money to do that. There's enough money to go around. We know how much money there is and how much money is being spent for the window dressing, for the location, for the network, for the this and the that, for the soon to be UBL, or but we can't test year round efficiently. I don't buy it. Why is that not a priority? That is a fix. That is something where those who claim to want to fix the sport and clean up boxing and make boxing great again will make it greater than it's ever been. Put something in place that takes this conversation out of the lexicon. Put this to bed once and for all. Use all of this extra money for that.
Yeah, well, that's Bill and Devin's contention. That's part of why they're iffy on a rematch is, hey, you're not doing the 365 VADA testing. You're not doing the year-round thing. And okay, so you're gonna say after the fight I did VADA testing, which he did, but it wasn't for the extended window they think you should be to make sure everything's on the up and up. And that's why they made sure to get Brian Norman several months ahead of time. However, at the same time, VADA is not backed by some government agency to help enforce it. It's a voluntary, privately owned thing, Margaret Goodman and everything, and that's better than nothing. But the point being, even when USADA was backed by the United States, Floyd had his IV exemption for Manny Pacquiao, so that shows even at a higher level than what VADA would have enforcement wise, they could still be circumvented if money and politics come into play. And then also there was some Brits I spoke to after the fight, some of our colleagues who said they reached out to VADA and Margaret Goodman to inquire about Ryan Garcia and Barrios's VADA testing, and they said talk to Tom Brown, talk to TGB, and that's not very transparent. That's just passing the buck to somebody else. So yeah, VADA, it's better than nothing, but there are strength coaches out there who know how to beat those tests as well. And it's been shown by an agency like USADA, who even had a higher degree of backing than VADA does, that it can still be circumvented to a degree
Well,
for
yeah, but sure,
special
the
cases. Yeah,
more confusion there is around the process and who's paying for the testing and which fight is going to be tested for how long, all of that is ripe for circumvention. I'm saying at least if there's one system in place, one agency accountable for it, whether it be private or not, then at least we're all running under the same system. And then when there's irregularities, we can point to that. Like, yes, Floyd had this, retroactive exemption, but at the same time, he wasn't on universal. He wasn't on year-round
right.
testing. What might have been flushed out of his system was put in his system if that was something that was needing to be flushed while he wasn't testing, clearly. And he just wanted to make sure that it was fully gone. Well, if you're year-round testing on the same system, well, maybe that's not possible. Or at least, again, if something irregular happens, we've got documentation of it and we can question it. And a fighter who you're facing can make a decision based on some irregularity or some suspicion. But what we have right now is also down to the fighter to pay for, which also shouldn't be the case. If you want to have an NFL style promotion like Zuffa claims to be implementing at some time in the near future, or you want to be the godfather of boxing, then you really do need to do some of the fixes that don't just fill your pockets. Let's spend some of these extra dollars that you're going to put into the sport to not just aggrandize your brand or to big up your latest promotion in a site that no one's had a fight before, but let's do some fundamental things to actually help the sport as a universe, to take some of these things off the table that are the blight on our sport. And there isn't a bigger blight, there isn't a more obvious thing to fix than the question around performance enhancing drugs and the lack of uniformity on how testing is done and even how punishment is eked out. The system is absolutely chaotic. Streamline it, make it universal, put some money into that, put enough money into that to make the difference.
Again, nothing would surprise me in elite level sports, whether it's Ariza shakes for Manny Pacquiao or IV drains for Floyd Mayweather or LeBron every now and then taking his hiatuses to Miami back in the day and then coming back rejuvenated during the season, or whether you look at some of these physiques on NFL players that we know are being drug tested, but that's all. It's elite level sports. Nothing would surprise me. But Garcia ultimately has popped, and so the level of suspicion on him is higher than it would be his peers, understandably so. Back that all of that now covered. The fights itself, should they happen, the core element style. We always say styles make fights, and two of the core elements that led to Garcia's two losses from Rolly Romero and Gervonta Davis was an eraser, really fearsome punching power, and being a quick twitch athlete like he is to match his quick twitch, right? And fighters like Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson bring many more ingredients to the table than Rolando Romero does, for example, right? They are overall better fighters than he is and much superior technicians, right? But they do lack one of those potential core ingredients that led to Garcia losing his fight, and that is that eraser level punching power. Now, Haney did hurt Ryan Garcia in the third round of their first fight with a left hook. I think he's punching harder now that he's comfortable and grown into the true weight class he was destined to be in at 147. That's why he dropped Ryan Norman. I think he can punch at 147 better than he could at 135 or 140. And Shakur Stevenson is one of those fighters who may not have heavy hands and the knockout power, but he's so sharp and so pinpoint that it's like Floyd was at 147 and above. It's enough to make you honest. It's enough that you not just want to run into that shit. And if you do run into it too much, you could be looking up at the lights. So I think they both have respectable punching power. I'm not, calling them. I'm not saying that's such a weakness in their game, but I don't know if it's a strength like it is for Rolly Romero and Gervonta Davis. That's all. There's levels to that. And that's what makes these two matchups intriguing for me. Even Shakur, who would be a favorite over Ryan Garcia, Ryan even said that after the fight. He's like, he doesn't have that power. That's him being self-aware. You don't have, he's estimating one of those things that's my kryptonite. Because Ryan fights a lot better when he's confident. And when he gets tamed, like after Rolly dropped him, after Tank dropped him, both in the second round, his body language, everything about him recedes. It remains to be seen if you can bring that out of him and take his heart and take his confidence from him with pinpoint accuracy, with skills, with all that stuff. Because Haney did that in some rounds against him, and it didn't lead to that. It didn't have that effect on him. Now, Haney also fought with a bad game plan. That's been admitted by the Haneys ever since that happened. He would fight with a much better game plan. He would be stronger at 147 than he was against 140. Ryan would have to pass a drug test this time. They would, and he wouldn't have 3.5 pounds of him in a rematch. Going that's a big key. PEDs or not, is being able to come in 3.5 pounds heavier than the other guy. So all these factors, I think, lead to a more competitive and even playing field in fight number two. But that doesn't mean Garcia can't beat him again. I think that's close to a 50-50 in most people's eyes. I think Shakur would be a favorite, but Garcia is bigger than him and has the speed, has great hand speed, as we know, is the bigger puncher. I think it's definitely a more competitive matchup than Teofimo Lopez turned out to be when we say styles make fights. So those are, and then him and Conor Benn is two explosive, flawed fighters. I'd give the edge to Garcia at 147 over Conor Benn. I'd pick him to win that fight. And I think he's a very interesting. I mean, everyone knows he's an interesting matchup with Haney, but I think he's an interesting matchup for Shakur Stevenson at 147 as well. He said he'll get down to 144 for that fight. I don't think that's smart. I think if you're Ryan Garcia, you should leverage your stardom to say, no. Let's fight at 147. And if Shakur balks, he balks, and then maybe try to address that fight at another time. I don't think going down to 44 would be smart. He might blow it anyways and not even make that weight.
I like Garcia's attitude, which has been that from the beginning. He does want the big fights. He does want to fight the guys that people say will beat him. He's never been anything other than that. He's never shied away from a challenge or shrinked away from being an underdog. However, I don't want to see that fight right now. I am, with all
With
the
Haney or
criticism
Shakur?
of the four, I don't want to see the Shakur fight right now.
Yeah.
All the criticism of the four belt era. I think this 47 division right now is the perfect example of how a four belt era can be executed in the best possible scenario for maximum entertainment and drama. I want to see a card with Ryan fighting the rematch with Rolly, Haney versus Crocker, Final Four. Then, if the two Garcia and Haney can come through those opponents for undisputed the rematch. Garcia has unfinished business with Rolly and with Haney. He ain't got no time for Shakur. I'm not looking for you to be big show hunting yet. You got business to handle. You need to avenge that loss if you can against Rolly, and you need to legitimize that win if you can over Devin Haney. And Debo needs to run the block. And right now, 47 is his block. So I'm not looking for anybody to get off the block and have a side mission. That 47 for Final Four and then undisputed, whoever comes through, is a beautiful way. And let's start testing today for all four of those fighters until we get an undisputed at 47.
Yeah.
Nobody gets off track. Nobody takes a side mission. And we can have this done by the end of the year, or certainly by this time next year. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, boxing has rarely worked out that organized and well. I think I would like to see that. I think that's a great idea because I'm originally of the thought, let's get it, unification. That's enough for me to. But you're right, you lost to Rolly. Why not run that back first? Devin's been wants a Lewis Crocker fight. He's talked about Xander Zayas at 154 too, but Xander wants to fight Josh Kelly. Right, and that fight doesn't have a You're right. I love that. That's the doubleheader. Ryan Roley, Crocker, Haney Crocker, and that now it's undisputed. And hey, you could have Shakur Stevenson fight Conor Benn for the Zuffa belt in the same weight class, and then you could have a 5-belt unification if you all want at some point. No, but seriously, Shakur could go to the UK, fight Conor Benn, seriously for the Zuffa belt if they want. Who cares? And they but if Shakur handles his business there, and then eventually Shakur could fight the winner of Ryan and Devin too, or Devin and Ryan too, for the undisputed welterweight title. He could, and since you're talking about two fights, he could fight a Conor Benn at 147 and then drop down to 40, defend that title, drop down to 35 if he wants, and fight for a lineal title fight with Raymond Murataya, whatever he wants to do in his second fight. But all that aside, you're not even thinking of Shakur in this equation and all that. You don't
No.
need to. The scenario you laid out is actually the best one. Yeah, I think that would be great.
Yeah. And I want to see Shakur back at 35. I think Suleiman was out of line, out of his mind to
Yeah,
strip
he
him.
wasn't even fighting for your belt
It's
against Tiafimo.
so
Chill.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and Dana is right about that. Like,
He
boy,
is.
what a commercial for the problem
Yeah.
that Suleiman just handed him on a silver platter.
Hmm.
Absolutely disgraceful decision. But with that said, this Zuffa uh, link up with Conor Ben for one fight, apparently, again, has to make some sense. And I said, oh, Mayweather at 54. Again, as you know, I'd be living in the comments. So, well, there's no 54 division in Zuffa. Well, there's no 68 division either. But what was their first fight? You know what I mean? There's also no acknowledgement of the sanctioning bodies. But what belts are on the line for Canelo Crawford? And if we're looking at
They would say
60,
that's not Zuffa though. That was
no, it was that is considered Zuffa's first fight. It
that
wasn't
was
their
Zuffa
first
zero
numbered
zero.
event,
So
but that was Zuffa,
that
huh?
was what was Zuffa? Oh, Callum Walsh against Carlos Ocampo was Zuffa 0-1, and you're saying Canelo Crawford was Zuffa 0-0. That was 0-0.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
All right.
They're taking credit for that fight, right? That's on their Wikipedia. That's on their website. That's a fight that they claim to have promoted. That's their first. That was their first fight. And so what I'm saying is,
And the quality
if
has dipped since then. No, just go
a little bit, a little bit, a little
Just
bit.
kidding.
But if we're looking at 60 or 47 as the only available weight classes, well, then 54 is still some class where, yes, now you have a lot of room, another 6 pounds to be comfortable. But what does it matter? What does it matter if you get Floyd coming in, or you can negotiate the weight? Like I think 13 pounds between the weight classes at that level, I don't think that is wise. I like a 54 division. I think that's too broad a gap, too broad a range. Or are we gonna do it at 47? Is Conor gonna have to drain down at 47? No. He's going to take a fight at 60 and then just take a fight with somebody who's not going to be 60 pounds, 160 either. That's what you're going to end up with. I really, I really can't wait to see how these little changes that Zuffa is employing really work out. Boxing ain't MMA. 13 pounds between divisions of 47 and 60 is a significant jump. I can understand a little bit more when you're down at 35 and 40 or something like that, even though little guys, that makes a difference too. But 13 pounds, I'll be interested to see how people start negotiating the weights in between these classes.
No, after the fight, Oscar said we still have a contract with Ryan. Ryan hugged Oscar at the post fight. He said he's kind of a free agent. I kind of don't know what he means by that. So we'll see what how that plays out going forward too. Oscar had a lot to say about Virgil Ortiz after the fight too. If you guys want to check my Twitter or whatnot, but yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see promotional wise what is going on with Ryan. Apparently, though, by almost all accounts, De La Hoya has some kind of involvement for 2 fights left. So
It's Trader Week, and who would have thought that it was going to end with Ryan Garcia embracing his promoter, thanking him for all he's done for his career, and showing the loyalty, and it would be Conor Ben, who's absolutely turned his back on his promoter and joined the other side of the pond in a treacherous move. That, to me, wasn't on anybody's bingo card. And not only that, but Ryan got revenge on his trainer, who he feels like was treacherous as well, and turned on him in the moment that is his greatest glory, winning a world championship. He got to do that against a trainer who turned his back, and then he turns to Oscar De La Hoya of all people and throws his arms around him, embraces him, and thanks him for the career, while Conor Ben is ringside with a Zuffa uniform on. Boy, you cannot beat boxing.